it seems that the tournament selection committee rewards teams that are on fire all season long. They reward teams that are thought to be top 10 and then finish top 10. And then the teams that build and mold and get ready for tournament time, those teams, I guess they don't get rewarded with top seeds or in the case of Michigan, a location that's geographically sound for them. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, the locations are based upon the seed. So the when you go down the seed line, so if Michigan was like the third, number 3 or whatever it was, then the higher seeds get priority. So, I'm not crazy about the way they do that geographically, but that's just a function of the bracketing principles they use. The selection, I thought, left a lot to be desired this year. And I'm not a fan. Look, the committee is full of great people, but it changes all the time. So every time there's a new chair, it goes in a different direction. And I'm not a big fan, Rich, of sort of the committee sending messages. I don't think that's their charge. I think the charge is to take the best teams after the automatic qualifiers are in. And I think they made a bunch of mistakes in that regard. I don't look at it where, when they say full body of work and then they complain that in a non-conference season the team didn't go on the road enough, you're saying, wait a minute, if they get enough road games in their conference season, if you're saying full body of work, why should that matter? I think they make a lot of mistakes, but the good news is no matter how many mistakes they make, we always have a good tournament. But you make seeding mistakes, and it affects the bracket. And we've seen it in past years where, Kentucky was an 8, and there was no way they were an 8, and they wound up beating Wichita State, so it was unfair to Wichita State. You could argue it was unfair to Kentucky to have to play a number 1, but they got paired with a number 1 that they were just as good as they were a 4 seed that year. And they did a lot of that in this year's tournament. There are a lot of seeds that were off, and there were a bunch of teams that got in where you say, like, take Arizona State, for example. And look, Bobby Hurley's team had a good year, but they did all their work at the beginning of the year, and they didn't win a road game after Christmas. And USC, who lost in the first round of the NIT, or won in the first round of the NIT, but USC, they finished second in their league. Arizona State finished 9th. And USC went to the title game of their tournament, and Arizona State was out in the first round. And you're going, well, wait a minute, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense.
So, in terms of underseeding, what would you say here? Arizona at 4. Where would you peg before we start moving on to actual games being played?
Oh man, there were a bunch of them, but there were a bunch of them. But I'd say the ones at the top of the bracket that really make the most impact, I would say that Michigan State as a 3 was totally misseeded. Michigan State should have been right with Xavier on the 1 line, and they were 29-4 and won the Big Ten outright. And just because they lost to Michigan in the Big Ten tournament, that shouldn't have disqualified them. When you're looking at teams that had double-digit losses that were contending for 2 seeds and 1 seeds, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I do think Arizona was underseeded as a 4. And, but overall, they're within shouting distance on some of them, but and they moved a bunch of teams up and down the seed line based upon whether they had another team in their league that was in the same bracket. And I'm not crazy about that either. I think all these teams play so much and sometimes avoid, they might only play a team in their league once. I don't think you mess with the seeding based upon, hey, they're going to play a team in their that came from their league. So what? Like just play.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.